The Peaceful Mother. Hello and welcome to The Peaceful Mother, where I empower you to go from reactive parenting to proactive parenting, helping you heal old wounding and teaching you how to regulate your nervous system so that you can show up as the peaceful parent that you aspire to be. I'm Emily. I am a trauma recovery coach, a parenting coach, and author of The Angry Mom's Guide to Self-Regulation. You may already know me from my Facebook or Instagram pages. Whether you are new here or not, I am so glad that you decided to click on this video. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things so that we can get this information out there to as many parents in need as possible. Thank you. Let's get into this. All right, so today I'm doing a Q&A. So I'm going to answer some questions from some of my subscribers, some of my followers. And before I get into that, I do want to address, I had a comment recently from someone here on YouTube expressing difficulty with the sound quality on my videos. And don't worry, I did not take offense to that at all. I understand that my sound quality is not that great. My family and I are in the middle of a big move to a new state. And when we get settled into our new house, I will actually have a home office. This is not a home office. This is not my home. This is a place that I use that's somebody else's. And so I haven't been able to set up like a good, quality sound system, all of that. When I get settled into my new home office, my DJ sound engineer husband is going to help me out with that. So in the future, in the near future, within the next month, my videos should hopefully improve in their sound quality, background, all of the things. So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's dive into your questions. I've got 3 questions that I'm gonna answer today. And the first one's pretty long, so I have my computer open to read it. So I hope that my computer fan is not adding to the poor sound quality. Sorry if it is. Okay, so M writes, I am completely lost with the boundaries issue. My children are still pretty small, 8, 5, and 3, and when they don't cooperate, I rather relate it to with me not being attuned to their needs at the moment. And I'm still learning how to set my boundaries without hurting them. Love your book. She writes in parentheses, thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. What confused me and made me think more deeply about this issue was a situation I experienced at my friend's house. A 10-year-old girl was supposed to get out of bed in the morning, get dressed, have breakfast, walk the dog. She and her sister had a schedule of walking the dog, and then go to school. Her mom was continuously informing her that that she was running out of time, that she still had time, that she still needed to walk the dog. She finally left the apartment saying she wouldn't walk the dog because she was getting late for class and slammed the door. Her mom got upset and the dad said she has just set her boundary. That confused me, for me, it was nothing but being irresponsible. What kind of boundary was that? I not well expressed. I'm unable to be in charge of the dog in the mornings. Is it me and the mom who is getting it wrong, or is it the dad who's being too protective of his daughters and too permissive? Of course, I don't know this family. I don't know all of their dynamics. I don't know every detail, all the subtleties of how this morning went or kind of what their typical response is. But I'm going to give kind of just my initial reaction to it and, kind of go with the obviously the information that I have here. So my initial thought is that the dad is a little misguided and being a bit permissive in this case. Now, is it reasonable for a 10-year-old girl to not be able to meet an expectation that's put on her? Absolutely, that's valid. Is it possible that maybe the daughter needed more like hands-on guidance through the process rather than just being told like, you need to do your stuff, you need to do your stuff, you need to do your stuff? That is certainly possible. Sure, she's 10, she's not like 4, but children often are still dealing with a lot of distractions. It's hard for them to put, a plan of action into place. So it's certainly possible that she was either just kind of being unresponsive and irresponsible that morning, but it's also possible that she was just really having a hard time meeting the expectation and that she needed more, like I said, hands-on help with that process. Regardless, when it comes to boundaries, something like that, I would say it's not so much that she set her boundary, it's that she expressed, at least that morning, not being able to meet the expectation. And I do think that it's permissive just to kind of be like, okay, like she can just do what she wants or not do whatever she wants. I do think that it's important for, in a situation like that, for the parents later that day, and for all we know, perhaps they did have this conversation later in the day, but when the girl comes home from school, I do think it would be important for those parents to have a conversation with her about kind of the challenge of that morning, the way in which she expressed that with doors slamming and yelling, and then open up the conversation to like, you know, what was going on for you this morning? It seems like you were having a hard time. Do you want to kind of talk about like what was going on for you? Is there something else going on that made this morning more difficult for you to meet your expectations versus other mornings? Things like that. And then if need be, you know, maybe adjust the expectations for her, or, you know, maybe you got to give her some grace. Maybe she's having a tough morning for whatever reason. Or maybe it's time for a consequence. You know, there's no like correct answer because again, I don't have all the context here. But I do think it would be permissive just to be like, okay, my 10-year-old can do whatever she wants, even if she has this task that's her responsibility, she can just yell at us and slam the door and just not do it. No, there needs to at least be a serious conversation, not just talking at her and lecturing her, shaming her, things like that, but really having an open conversation about, man, this morning was really tough for all of us. And maybe, you know, mom needs to take responsibility for the way that she, you know, the tone that she used in reminding her daughter. I have no idea, but there needs to be a conversation there. Generally with boundaries, you know, if a child has an expectation on them, so with authoritative parenting, we are responsive and respectful with our children, but we are firm in that we have clear expectations of our children. So that might vary from family to family, but if in their family, their rule is that the girls alternate taking the dog for a walk in the morning before school, and that's been a norm for them, it's been very clearly communicated to her, then that's why that conversation needs to happen. And potentially there's some kind of consequence, not necessarily a punishment, but just some kind of consequence. Maybe the consequence is like, okay, well, you're going to have to do it tomorrow, or, you know, you're not going to have as much time to do this other task that you enjoy doing in the morning because now you're going to have to walk the dog before you can do these other things. I don't know what that would look like for them. But we do want to be firm. Like, no, these are my expectations of you and you don't have to like it. And it's okay if you're having a hard time with it. And we're totally here to support you and help you when you're having a hard time, and you can express that to us. We're here, like, and we can discuss whether we need to make adjustments to, you know, our rules and the way in which our family functions. That's totally reasonable. But here's the expectation. This is the expectation of you, and you didn't meet your expectation. So what's going on, and how can we resolve this so that this doesn't happen again? Because this doesn't work for the whole family, and we're a team here. We're all part of the family. You're a really important part of this family, despite the fact that mom and dad are the leaders in this, we're the coaches. You, 10-year-old daughter, are a really important part of this, and the decisions that you make about how you meet our expectations impacts the rest of us. So let's find a solution to this. So I think that's how I would probably handle the situation. Again, I don't have all the details, but generally speaking, I wouldn't really say she set her boundary. She definitely was communicating a challenge, a need, something that should be taken seriously and really listened to through that behavior and that lack of action with the dog. But I wouldn't really say it was necessarily her setting a boundary that the parents like need to just like be like, okay. So I hope that helps. I'm happy to get into more on boundaries in another video if that's something that interests you guys. So please just let me know in the comments. So our next question comes from N, and she's asking for statements to say to her dysregulated child, age 5. So it depends on the level of dysregulation that we're dealing with here. So, you know, first I'll just say for a 5-year-old child, they're still not capable of self-regulating. They still are relying completely on the caregiver's ability to co-regulate with them. They are not capable of the self-soothing, the self-regulation at this point. That comes in around age 7 or 8, depending on the child. So at age 5, they still really need that co-regulation, and their brain is still very much highly developed in the emotional survival region of the brain and not as developed in this frontal region where impulse control and logic and reason and things like that that's where that function comes from. So they're still very emotional beings, and that's totally normal. Now, do we want to see the same level of tantrums in a 5-year-old than we would with like a 2 or 3-year-old? No, we would hope that by now those are better. And if they're not, then I would either speak with some kind of professional and occupational therapist, or, some kind of child therapist, something like that. Or I would look at what has your responses been so far, and is there adjustments that need to be made in your attunement, your co-regulation, your, kind of the discipline that you give, and potentially the child's attachment to you. So let's just say that this is a totally, kind of normal 5-year-old. They still have their big emotions. They still we all get super dysregulated. And so, if they're highly escalated, like if they're like really, really, really like at the most escalated they can be, like there's crying, there's hysterics, maybe there's some flailing, I don't know. That's not really the time to say anything. We can certainly try, and sometimes it's helpful to be like, oh, I see that you're upset. Like, I would be so upset about that too. Or I'm so sorry to disappoint you. Like, I see you're upset. I'm sorry that you're feeling this way. But they're not really going to hear you if they're super dysregulated, because they are in survival mode. So our kids are going to go into survival mode, even if we're like the best parent and we're super awesome and responsive. Like, just saying, no, you can't have a cookie for breakfast is going to be really upsetting, and it's going to make them go into a stress response. And so essentially they're in survival mode. They're not hearing this like logical explanation of like, well, you can't have the cookie before breakfast because of this. And they're also probably not going to hear anything else that you say, like, so in that case, it's really a matter of co-regulation. You have to stay regulated yourself as best as you can. If they're open to affection, give them that hug, hold them, rock them. The rocking is going to help put them back into the parasympathetic function. But, if they're not open to affection, a lot of kids are not open to affection when they're super dysregulated, then you just stay nearby and you just hold space for them. And what hold space means is that you are staying regulated and you're just attuning. And so what attuning is it's really about matching where they're at in an appropriate way. So if they're upset, you're not like, it's okay, don't cry. Attunement is, you're matching the emotion with your face. So you can do that. You can just be taking breaths. You can be doing some of the techniques that I've shared in other videos, making sure that you are staying regulated. And once they've de-escalated a bit, so now let's say the child is still dysregulated, but they're not like in full escalation. Maybe they're whiny. Maybe they're just a little, snippy snappy, like, you're like, okay, whatever, like, dinner's gonna be in 5 minutes, and they're like, I know that, something like that. That's my daughter. They're dysregulated, but they're not necessarily in a full escalated situation. They're whiny, they're cranky, they're grumpy, whatever. In that case, they are going to be more receptive to us really speaking with them. So the first thing that we really want to do is, as best we can, we want to get down on their level. And we want to be at eye level or just below. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a sense of safety. A lot of times we're talking to our children and they're down here and we're looking down at them and they have to look up at us. And that automatically kind of creates a sense, a lack of safety and a feeling like they're being dominated. Think about how you feel when somebody much larger than you're like looking up at them. So you want to get down at their level, and that's automatically creating more of a sense of safety and helping them go back into a parasympathetic function. So this is like rest and digest versus like the fight or flight dysregulated state. We want to get them back into parasympathetic. That's the more regulated state. So that's the first thing to do. And there's no like magical statement or right statement or wrong statement necessarily. But it's really just about trying to, as best you can, again, attune. And if you don't really know what's going on with the child, it seems like you're really upset. And I'm not sure why. Do you know why? It's okay. Sometimes I just feel grumpy and I don't know why either. It's not fun to feel, I know, and I'm here. I'm going to love you no matter what. Is there something I can do to help you? And just really trying to, like I said, attune, validate, and really try to open up that form of communication. And this is where things like the posters that I sell on my website can be really helpful, because when a child is dysregulated, a lot of times for a lot of kids, they lose their voice, or they're just not, they have their voice, but it's like a very whiny, kind of hard to understand voice, or they're not able to fully articulate things. And it's just like, daddy, it's like, okay, well, what about daddy? Trampoline. Okay, something about daddy and the trampoline. Okay, what happened with daddy and the trampoline? And so the posters are great because they don't have to verbalize things. They can just point, and they can express like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm needing. And that can help open things up. And so then once you meet that need, of giving them affection or giving them playtime or whatever their need might be that's underlying, because remember that if your child's dysregulated, there's some kind of need beneath that's not being met. And whatever expression they're giving you, emotional expression, whether it's, crying, whether it's whining, whether it's attitude, whatever it might be, that's them trying, it's them trying to regulate, but it's also them trying to communicate the need to you. So really trying to meet that need before you really get into kind of what was going on. So because a lot of times they're not going to be able to even identify what's going on for them and talk about it, like I said, until that need's met. So it can be hard to identify what our children's needs are beneath the behaviors, beneath the emotions. But the more that we can connect with them, like I said, get down on that eye level, give affection if they're open to it, get playful if that's how they feel connected, whatever it might be, invite them to read a book with you. How do they feel connected most to you that you can tell? Offer that. And that's going to go so much further than having like this kind of script that you use each time. So it's really just, we as parents are, in a lot of ways we have to play detective, and we have to identify in any given moment, like, what is my child communicating to me right now? And again, connection is the way to do that. So I hope that helped. Now, the last question is from A. It's very similar. It says, in the middle of a 2.5-year-old crisis, what do I do? He hits himself when angry. I do validate. So validation and the statements, the scripts that you might see on social media, things like that, like those are wonderful. They're valuable, but not all kids are going to appreciate the validation. For some kids, you just say, oh man, you're so angry about that. I get it. I would be angry too if that happened. That's so frustrating. And for some kids, like, that's enough. They're like, okay, I feel heard. She gets it. Cool. I'm good to go. I'm ready to start calming down. Like, that's regulating for them. Other kids, oh no, no. You might even trigger them further if you validate their feelings. Some kids, like my daughter, like, she doesn't want to admit that she's upset or that she's angry. She's like, I'm not angry. And I'm like, really? Because you're hitting me and you're yelling and you seem pretty angry, So for some, the validation's not the right thing for them. And then also it's just not necessarily the right time. Maybe your 2.5-year-old would really appreciate validation, but not in crisis mode. I'm seeing the word crisis. So if your child is in a crisis and he's hitting himself because he's so upset about something, that's the validation. Like I said, he's not even hearing it. And if he is, it might just make him that much more annoyed or upset. So in that case, it's tough when kids hit themselves. I mean, it's not unusual for a child to hit themselves or smack their head against a hard object, the wall, the floor. It's so hard when that's like their thing. So obviously we want to keep them safe. Now, if he's hitting himself, but it's not causing actual injury or harm to him, then you let him do it. If there is potential, like if he's doing it really hard, if he's doing it in areas where he could really hurt himself, then this is where we do have to step in and we have to kind of help him stop that. And so there's various ways that we can do this, and some are going to work for your son and some are not. One way that you can do this is just a very gentle bear hug. And so it's kind of taking his hands down and just giving him a bear hug. And it's like firm but gentle, because he's probably going to try to wiggle and jiggle out of it. And it can be very dysregulating for you as the parent. And so you're bear hugging him, and maybe you're even rocking, and you're just doing your best. You're breathing. Maybe you're talking with him. I've had to do this like with my daughter during fears. She's got a lot of fears. So we've had to do this, and it's just a very soothing, like, just really, it's okay to feel this way. You're safe. I've got you. It's okay. Get it out. Get it out. You can cry. You can scream. Mama's got you. It's okay. And just something along that line. If that's not an option, if that's not something doable, then it's a question of maybe kind of taking him to a new location, somewhere where he can be a little bit more wild, that there's cushions everywhere, there's, things like that. And maybe you are having to kind of step in and, block some hits and things like that. It's unfortunately really just a tough situation. The other thing, sometimes kids are going to be open to giving an alternative. So maybe it's going to be like, I can see that you're really upset. Something along these lines. Doesn't have to sound just like this. I can see that you're so mad. Oh my gosh, you're so mad. I'm so mad too. And I want to hit something, but I don't want to hurt anybody. And I don't want you to hurt yourself. Ouchie. Okay, so I'm going to give you a pillow. I'm going to hit this pillow. Do you want to hit this pillow with me? Oh, it feels so good to hit it. And so then, maybe instead of hitting himself, he's willing to transfer that energy into the pillow. Another thing you can suggest to him, if he's open to it, is pushing against your hands. Push against my hands so hard. Oh my gosh, you're pushing in. So he's got both his hands up against your hands, and he's pushing with all his might and getting that aggression and energy, that anger out. So giving alternatives like that, or like, oh man, like let's stomp our feet instead. I'm so mad. I want to stomp my feet. Stomp, 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 stomp. And giving him those other ways of getting the energy out. Again, some kids are receptive to that. Others are not. And again, it also might just depend on how dysregulated he is. I hear that he's in crisis mode. There's a chance that he might not be open to these things. And it is going to be a question of you having to gently, authoritatively come in and prevent him from hurting himself. And then, once he's calmed down, have that conversation afterwards of, kind of giving him that opportunity to find another way to express those emotions. Like having that conversation about like, I understand why you want to hit. I want to hit things when I'm mad too. It feels so good to hit stuff, but it can also hurt when we hit ourselves, and I don't want you to get hurt, buddy. So what's something that we can do? What else do you think would feel really good? And give him that chance to practice that. Give him that chance to problem solve with you and practice that together, and then practice it regularly. Now, is he going to suddenly turn to that the next time he goes into, full escalation? No, he's probably going to go back to hitting himself, and you're going to have to intervene in the ways that you can and the ways that you know how. But then you can have that conversation again and again and again, and you can practice again and again and again. And in time, he's going to learn that. That's going to soak in. And eventually he's going to get to this point where he's like, okay, I'm upset. I want to push against mommy's hands, or I'm upset. I want to stomp my feet, things like that. So again, I hope that helps. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of times we want these like magical, these just like miraculous like answers or things that we can do. And it's really important to remember that our job as parents is not to stop our children from going through the hard times. It's not our job to stop them from feeling big emotions and being dysregulated, whether they're 2.5, 5, 10, 20, however old our kids are, we have to understand that emotions are important messages from their body about what they're experiencing and their environment. And we want to nurture them in being able to feel that. Emotions come over us and they hit us like a wave, especially when you're young, especially when we are in early childhood and that part of the brain is so developed and so active. It comes crashing in like this really overwhelming, really uncomfortable wave. And the more that we can support our children in that, no matter how hard it is and how dysregulating it is for us, the more that we can support our children in that, hold space, co-regulate, the more that they are going to learn that, you know what? Emotions come in really intensely and then it goes away. And then I'm okay. It's safe to feel these really big emotions. And I know that mom or dad or whoever you may be to the child that you're caring for, they're going to be there for me. They're my safety net. And so they learn this, and it's so important because how many of us as adults feel like I can't start crying? If I start crying, I will never stop. I'm afraid I'll never stop if I let myself go there. And it's just suppress, suppress, suppress. And I know these people. I love some of these people. I'm friends with these people, and maybe that person is you. And it's so painful, and it's so hard to live in that state, because the reality is that we live in that state of suppression, and I can't go there. I can't face the feelings because we never learned that emotions come in and then they go away. And they're really big and they feel so overwhelming. It's like it feels like you're drowning in the ocean underneath these crazy giant waves. It feels like that. But then the water flows back into the ocean and you realize that you're just there on the sand and you're safe and you're okay. And then it felt really intense, but you were actually safe the whole time. There, held on the sand, on the shore. So we want to teach our kids this. And it can be really triggering, obviously, for us. And so it's a chance to explore why this is triggering for us. Is it an emotional trigger? Is it just us being dysregulated? Because it's very natural for us to go into fight or flight when we hear screaming or see our kid hitting themselves or see one kid hitting the other kid. All of these things are very natural. It's normal that we would go into our own kind of fight or flight response with that. So we want to really explore that, and then check out my other videos and check out my content on my social media and things like that, so that you can learn those techniques to best keep yourself regulated and hold that space for your kids. So I hope this has been helpful. Please, if anybody has any questions regarding anything I covered today or something completely randomly different that you want me to cover in another Q&A video, please just let me know in the comments or reach out to me on social media, however you prefer. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And if you don't, I hope you can sit with that.